evening, UK Crime Book Club. I am here with the lovely Adam Hamdy, and I am discussing the things that I can't discuss tonight. So there are things that I cannot say live on camera to anyone who hasn't read the book. So this should be interesting. Thanks, Adam. Say hello. Say hello, introduce yourself and the book. I don't know if you've got a copy with you, but I have one right here.
I do have one.
So organised.
It's The Other Side of Night. My name's Adam Hamdy, and I'm the author of The Other Side of Night. And it's really nice to be with you here today, Sam, and chatting to you about the things we can't talk about.
It should be really, really interesting. I was the same, obviously, a while back I spoke to your gorgeous wife, Amy, who I absolutely adore. I'm sure that's a mutual appreciation society.
No, it is, absolutely.
But she was the same, all the things that I couldn't say. And it was like, what can you say? But I don't know what you're all trying to do to me. I really don't. All the emotions from this book are... We can't discuss it. Hello, Donna. Good evening.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Kaz. Thank you for tagging everybody and pinning us to the top of the group. I have to start with congratulations. Brand new release, fantastic book. I've been trying to explain it to people, but how would you explain this book? That might give me an indication of just how deep I can go into all the questions that I've got.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it starts with a disgraced former police officer, Harriet Kilty, and she buys a book in a secondhand bookshop in Nantwich. And as she's reading it, she finds a message inside saying, "Help me, he's trying to kill me." And she's sort of at a very odd place in her life where she's left the police force. She doesn't really have anything to do. She doesn't really have a purpose. And she decides she's going to follow this thread. And she finds out that the last person to borrow the book from the library before it was given to the secondhand bookshop died. And so Beth Asher died, and her husband, David Asher, disappeared, presumed dead, and she starts to think they may have been murdered. And when she goes to their house to find out what sort of happened to them, she encounters the man she thought was the love of her life, Ben Elmis, who has been given custody of the Asher's child, Elliot. And Ben kind of broke up with her a year previously, and she's shocked to find him there, and he becomes the suspect in the deaths of these two people. And she just starts pulling at this thread, and her main concern, she's partly kind of wants to find out why he broke up with her and what happened, but mainly her main concern is protecting the child, making sure that nothing bad happens to Elliot. And so she starts pulling at the thread, and it goes somewhere quite unexpected. And I say you'll get out of this book what you want to get out of it. It's sort of, there's a lot of, I want to sound too authorly, but there's a lot of space in the book for you to find what you want out of it, and you'll take away what you need. There are moments that are kind of, as you were talking about before we came on air, that are very emotional and just get you, just grasp you.
Yeah.
But you'll kind of, there's something in there for everyone, I think.
I would absolutely agree. I have to start with a question that I very rarely ask, because I usually get the answer, just kind of happened. But you have some real inspiration for where this story came from. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And hello, everybody. And Laura Hamilton is saying her brain was reeling for a good day or two after she read this. She actually commented on the post saying, "Sam, how are you going to talk about this without giving plot spoilers?" And I was like, let's see.
Right?
Let's go back to Elliot's question.
I apologize, Laura, for any damage done to your brain. I hope it's recovered now. But so I mean, the idea for the book was a question that our son Elliot asked in the Peak District, walking along the Roaches, which is where the book is sort of largely set. And he asked this question when he was 8 years old. I can't really talk about it because it's a bit of a spoiler, but it was a question that, sort of played on his fear of losing his parents. And it's a common, it's a common fear for children. And I just thought, wow, there's a book in this, because it's playing on a universal fear, which is kids' concern for their parents, and I just thought, wow, there's a story here. There's something to that just I couldn't shake it, and so I just started working on it as a short story first of all, and it just grew and grew, and
This
yeah,
started as a short story.
yeah, it started as a short story. The last two chapters are basically with a short story. Not the last two, the sort of penultimate two, with a short story. And
One of those made me cry.
yeah,
You know which one it was.
yeah, yeah. So you know that's where it kind of grew from, and I worked on it. I've worked on it for 5 years, so it's been a real.
Wow.
Yeah, it felt too procedural when I did a first version of it. I did about 50,000 words of a first version of it, and it just didn't feel right. I just threw it in the bin. It wasn't
You
working.
chucked the whole thing out. You didn't keep it
Yeah,
for.
I didn't use it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't. It wasn't right. I really wanted to get this one right because it just felt kind of special, and so I wanted to take my time over it. So I've been working on other things, doing other books and everything. And this has just been slowly growing. Yeah, so that's where it came from. It's yeah, our son Elliot kind of inspired it with a question, and then 5 years later he read it. So
And what
yeah.
did he think, and how did he feel about being the inspiration behind this story?
Well, it was interesting because I'd forgotten that he was reading it, and he came out of his room. I just saw him walk onto our patio, and he came out and he was crying. And I ran over to him. I said, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" He said, "I finished the book." Oh no!
It's almost what happened to me when I finished it. That I was a bit kind of almost staggering about, like, what has just happened?
Yeah, yeah. So he just said, he was kind of just speechless. And after he'd calmed down and everything, and I said to him, "Did you like it?" He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "And it's amazing that this has come from, something that I said." And so he loves it now that he can, got his name in the front of the book and the characters named after him, and he's all over this book. So yeah, no, he loves it. But he was really quite shaken, and he asked a really interesting question. He said, "I don't know whether it's a happy or a sad ending." It's like, is it a happy or a sad ending? I can't even tell you that.
I have an answer, but I won't say what my answer is online.
Right. Okay. Okay.
I'm leaning 49-51 towards one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, it's that kind of book. It's like, it's just, yeah, it gets you thinking, and that's what I wanted, and that's why I took so long over it.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely worth you taking the time and the effort over it. Definitely. Somebody has asked, what's it like writing both graphic novels and novels? That's a good question.
I mean, I haven't written any graphic novels for ages, but I've learned a lot from those. Mainly now I sort of split my time between screenwriting and novels, and mainly novels, to be honest. I've just done a pilot for a TV series, but the graphic novels taught me so much about thinking about things visually. And you have to really, because you can't show motion, you can't move a camera, you can't do anything. You have to really think about what you're portraying on that page in those panels. So it's quite a good discipline to get into, because you have to think about what are the important elements, and you're doing that constantly in a novel, in a screenplay. You're always thinking about what do I want people to take away from this? Not necessarily visually, but emotionally, dramatically. It's kind of, what are the key things that I need to convey here? So I think it does teach you that sort of discipline of economy and directing your communication so that you're getting the most effective response out of the reader or the viewer.
And that was from Kaz. I just had a look. Can't see it on the Be Live, but I can see it on the Facebook page. So I've just had a
Thank you,
quick shift between. Kaz is a huge fan of graphic novels.
Ah, cool.
So she's recommended some.
Good taste.
Yeah, she's recommended some manga and different things for my eldest, who they're into all kinds of similar things. They've never met, but they both recommend things to each other. So that's really nice. Just the whole, I'm going back to the bits I can talk about. So we begin with a preface. And I actually, the way it was written, I thought, is this Adam? Is this Adam's? Is that what you're aiming for?
Yeah, I mean, the book kind of blurs reality and fiction, and I wanted that to come. I wanted people, a lot of people aren't familiar with my writing, but I wanted people who were sort of familiar with me and everything to think, oh, is this Adam? And you only realize at the end that you're in, hearing a character's voice, and all the way through the book, it plays around with accepted conventions of, whether it's crime or romance or, and as you were saying earlier, how do you even put this into a genre? What is it? It's, there's a mystery in it. There's a crime. There's romance. There's all sorts of things. So
I think
I wanted
whatever
to,
genre you're into, you could pick it up and find something of that genre for you.
yeah.
How
I
you've
think
done
so.
that.
Well, I just wanted to tell a story. I find it really fascinating because when you get into this business, and I had no clue that this would be the case, genre and pigeonholing an author is really important. Publishers are geared up to turn you into, a crime brand or a, romance brand or whatever. And for me, story's story, right? You tell a good story and people will
Yeah.
come with you, I think. And if you look at, great books over time, it's always been about character and story and just engaging the reader. And people will, cross genres. And one of my favorite books is Cloud Atlas, the David Mitchell novel. And there's sci-fi in that, romance, historical fiction, crime. I mean, it's just a mash of everything, and it works. People went with that book. So I think maybe commercially it's easier for publishers because they have a machine that kind of works efficiently then. But for readers, I as a reader personally don't really care about genre. I read romance books, I read crime, I read sci-fi, I read all sorts of things. So, I enjoy all sorts of things. The main thing that matters to me is, are the characters compelling? Is the writing good? Is the story good?
Yeah.
That's it.
I would completely agree. And Mills, yes, it is The Other Side of Night. I lined it up in case anybody asked so I could pick it up without knocking my books over. I'm getting good at that. So, Mills, it's fabulous. You will absolutely love it. Me and Mills are interested in a lot of the same kind of books. I'd say there were so many things. So for example, I'd put the washing machine on, set that going, and then I had to put the basket of clothes on the chair that I was sat in so I wouldn't keep sitting down and picking the book up because everything had to be hung up to dry, and I wasn't doing it. I was just kind of leaving the basket sat. And then that thing of covering the bottom of the page with my hand, because I'd see that at the bottom of the page it was set in a different way, and I'd know there was something important in that bit, so I'm covering it up, trying not to read ahead, doing line by line, knowing that I don't want to get ahead of myself. The whole thing, you're just racing through, but at the same time you're really trying not to race through, which is harder to do as the pace picks up, and you're racing and you're trying to slow yourself down, but you can't. I love it when that happens. Mills has just said sold.
Well, thank you very much, Mills. I hope you enjoy it.
She keeps threatening to get revenge on me at some point because I keep recommending great books, and she's like, I've got stuff to do, Sam. It's like, no, you need to read this book. That's it. That's all you need to be doing. Everything else can wait. But have you done that where, was it deliberate in the how it was set out so that sometimes there would be a bit at the bottom of the page that was going to get people racing, or was that just a fortunate coincidence?
I think, I don't have a huge amount to do with the layout. That's done by the publisher, and but I look at it before they send you over the proof as how it's going to appear and be laid out. And I was really happy with the way that they set it out. And there's so much in the book. There's court transcripts and journals, letters. You kind of what I wanted to give a chronicle of someone's life, basically. And we all leave behind a record. We all leave behind trails, and this family left behind quite an interesting trail. And so I just wanted to give people that experience of going inside their world. And so even though it is a fast book to read and it's not hugely long, I think it feels quite rich.
The comment that you can see there that says it's a great book, that's Tony Kent. Hi, Tony. Saw you in the acknowledgements.
Tony Kent is acknowledged because he gave me some brilliant realistic advice. I mean, I did law at university. I've done many pupilages. I've sat in courtrooms. I could not for the life of me remember how people talk in courtrooms. It's been so long. And I just emailed, well, I think on Twitter, actually, I DM'd him and I said, what do we say here? I couldn't remember. You don't use the words objection when you stand up in court. And so I asked him, what do you use?
You're looking for it now, aren't you?
I'm looking for it. And it's something like, I hesitate. That's it. I hesitate to rise, but my learned friend knows the rules. Can I ask that he sticks to them so that I don't have to address my lord further? Just say objection. It's so polite. It's so genteel. But again, it's that sort of thing where I could just reach out to Tony and get that for the authenticity of the fact that this is how you talk in court.
That's the thing. It's all of the things that we've seen on TV or maybe at the theatre, things that we've read over the years that have come from people watching TV, and they take that. I've just spotted no objection. We often just assume that is how it really is, and it's when you really start to look into the details of the books that you realise actually we do need to be more accurate where possible. Sometimes poetic license, fair enough, but for that kind of detail, it really did read beautifully. So thank you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. You're in the acknowledgements, but thank you very much for that.
Laura's saying, I think a physical copy is better. She had a digital Pigeonhole copy, and she thinks she lost a bit not being a physical copy, getting a physical copy for a reread at a later date. Now, I would say I have read most of it through the paperback that I was very kindly sent as an ARC. I also bought it on Audible and have been listening as well. And I did write down I wrote his name down somewhere. Your narrator, who is fantastic, and I was sure I made a note of his name, and I don't know where I've put it.
Oh my goodness, his name.
Oh, Justin Aveth.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely perfect. Yeah. You don't always get that. I mean, sometimes you can kind of tolerate the person once you get used to the voice. Sometimes you just think it's not how I imagine it would work. Justin was perfect. His voice, his tone, how he read different parts, fantastic.
I mean, that's
obviously
really interesting.
You must agree.
Well, I do, and actually, it was really interesting because when I initially, that is something where the author does get a reasonable amount of say, and the publisher sent me through an initial kind of list of potential actors to read, and you listen to their demo reels, you listen to their sort of show reels, and they were all too young. They all felt kind of quite young and I think they were pitching for the kind of maybe the perspective of Ben as the narrator. And I said, actually, if you look at the framing of the book, it's an old man. This is an older gentleman who's kind of got some gravitas and some a bit of gravel in his voice, and it needs to have that depth. And so we had a look at a few different people, and they just sent Justin over, and I just loved his voice the moment I heard it. I was like, that's the one, that's it.
I'm always quite anxious before I hit play because I can't listen to whole audiobooks that are especially like this intense. I can't follow it when I listen to it. I need to be looking at it. I realise it's different for everybody. My friend Leslie mainly listens to audiobooks, so she must have a better concentration level than I've got, because I'll be like, oh, if I'm listening to this, I could be doing the dishes, I could be doing something else, and then I get lost and mixed up. I didn't with Justin. He was just a perfect choice.
Yeah, no, he's really, really good. So I'm very pleased. So yeah, he's done a brilliant job.
He really has done a fantastic job. Let's talk about Harry. I absolutely adore Harry. So Harry is Harriet, who is your main character, really. Most of the book is told from Harry's point of view.
Yeah.
And I just think she's fantastic. There's so many different aspects to her. She's not kind of, which you would expect. You wouldn't write a one-sided character, but she has a vulnerability. She has a toughness. She's yearning for something. It's like she's waiting for this life to begin, this life that she wants. and I just adored her. And I thought calling her Harry instead of Harriet, Harry with an I, was really clever, because if we'd have called her Harriet, there's a completely different woman.
Yeah.
Just that the naming of the character just spoke volumes, as well as her actual character.
Yeah. Well, I mean, strangely, you kind of meet people as you go along through life, and you sort of hear names and places, and you kind of, writers are scavengers. You just be picking up stuff all the way through as you go through life, and you kind of store things. And I knew a Harry who exemplified many of the characteristics of the one in this book, and I thought, this, like, I kind of knew I was going to use that name at some point, and it felt right to use it here. And I do think names kind of do conjure up a picture. You're right. If she was called Harriet, she would have been very, very different person. So, yeah, no, I'm glad you like her. I found her very interesting to write, and she's, I try not to make any characters one-dimensional. It's not satisfying as a writer, and it's just not interesting as a reader.
Do you think that you could use Harriet in another book in some way? Would you maybe visit some of her time in the police force and have a different series?
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
This is just, I want more Harry.
Oh.
So I'm going to try and pitch an idea that you could write.
Well, you know what? If the book's a huge success, they'll come knocking on my door and ask for a sequel.
Because you could have something that is nothing to do with this book at all. You really could. Or you could have a sequel.
Yeah.
You could have a sequel. That may take some time. You could have both. We could have a sequel and a separate Harry series.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
Well, let's see how it goes. Just looking at the messages here.
Yeah, the whole book is full of moments. It does feel like a book of moments, and you've got some wonderful moments, some painful moments, but it felt really well balanced. There wasn't too much pain, and this sounds awful, there wasn't too much joy. You just kind of balanced. There was the right amount of elements of mystery and answer. I'm not surprised this took you 5 years. I feel like it'd take me 500 to even scratch the surface of something like this.
Thank you.
So the balance, how do you even go about that?
I mean, for me, it's life, isn't it? Life's rarely as bad or as good as you ever expect. Kind of when you're lying in the early hours, worrying about things, or when you're super excited, looking forward to something, you picture things at the extremes. But life's sort of a mix of everything. And so I just wanted to give something that felt authentic, not necessarily real, because this is fiction, right? So you can take liberties with reality, but certainly authentic, that it feels like you're inside these lives, and you're going along with these people and taking that journey. And in order for that to happen, it needs to be balanced. You need to get kind of highs and lows, and they need to sort of even out. And the mystery thing, I mean, this is my 9th book. I think Lee Child always talks about falling forward, falling forward into the next sentence, into the next page, into the next chapter. We're addicted to questions in our day-to-day life. We try and pattern everything. We try and understand things by kind of imposing a pattern onto life, onto chaos. We try and make sense of it. And the way we do that is by asking ourselves questions and then trying to come up with answers that explain it. That's what mysteries do. This is what crime fiction thrillers do. You're constantly asking questions. You're setting up a question that is going to be answered at some point. And over time, you just learn more or less, hopefully, what the right rhythm is in terms of when you set up a question, when you answer it. It isn't a formula. You just feel it. You just feel when it's the time to kind of have that payoff or that dramatic reveal or whatever. And hopefully you get the pacing right. And with a book like this, I had obviously 5 years working, and then 2 editors working on it, one from the States, one from the UK. And so we did a lot of work on, the main thing we focused on was the emotional payoffs, making sure that when you got to those emotional moments in the book, that they really landed and that people were left sort of gasping and blubbing.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Sorry, I'll adopt my somber face.
I can't take it seriously. But you did mention patterns in the book. When you've just said patterns, you've made me think of a scene on the Ridgeway where there's a character looking for patterns in the flowers. Do you even remember that bit? It must be
Yeah,
so
I
long
do.
ago that you
Yeah,
did
yeah,
this.
yeah. No, I do. I do. I mean, I've read it sort of 50 or 60 times now, so you have to when you're going through it all. Yeah, I mean, if you actually, what's been interesting is I've started getting messages from people who've read it for a second time, and they're going through and they're finding things that they missed the first time, and they see the significance of things as they go through the
Yeah.
book, and the emotional stuff still pays off. So it's really interesting to say, for people to say, you got me again. It's like it's I think it's that kind of book where I mean, I've read it so many times and I still enjoy it and it still gets to me. um, and I've got an event coming up soon with Anthony Horowitz, and he said it was just even better the second time round. I think it's that kind of book where even if you know the twist and everything, there's so much in there that you can, like I said, you take what you want from it. It's there to serve you as the reader. If you don't want much from it, then it's not going to give you much.
It's never. I'm going to read out a couple of comments actually. Mills is saying, I knew you were going to ask for more Harry the second you mentioned her. Yeah. I've asked for her twice, Mills. This is how good she is. And Tony's saying, life's pretty bloody good where you are. Doesn't look bad behind you there.
Yeah, so it's nighttime here. We moved to Mauritius in October, and the reason Tony knows this is because he visited in December, and he was just coming out here randomly on a holiday, and so we met up, and we went out on an adventure on a speedboat out to a place called Flat Island, and
Doesn't sound like Tony's got it too bad either from this
no,
story.
I know, no hard luck story there. Yeah, so yeah, no, it's nice. It's a nice place to live, and it's good for writing, quite peaceful, and yeah, just
Can imagine.
yeah.
This is a question I've never asked before because it's never occurred to me before. But working with two editors from different sides of the continent at the same time to get the book right, did they have different ideas on how things should go for their particular audience?
They had differing ideas. I don't know that it was for different audiences. It just everyone has their own different opinion on a piece of work. You'll focus on different things to other people, and so it wasn't too bad. It was actually really good because it gave me a lot of choice. Normally, when you work with one editor, you will get a set of notes, and you don't get more stimulation. It's kind of that is your blueprint for thinking about the book. But actually, working with two editors, you're getting two different sets of notes. You're getting a lot more ideas, and ultimately, it's not up to them to say what goes into the book or how it is, developed into the finished work. It's up to you as the author. And I always think, get as many ideas as you can, because then you can make a choice, and it stimulates your own thinking. So I really enjoyed it. Where they've gone different is in the covers. So if you look at the American cover, they've gone much more conceptual, I'd say darker, more edgy, and I think they're trying more to appeal to guys. And and kind of, I'm going to be perfectly frank, I think guys are more bigoted readers than women.
In what way?
I think women will pick up any book. You'll pick up a Lee Child with a very masculine cover. You'll pick up a James Patterson with a very masculine cover. Men typically won't. I don't know what it is. They just don't feel, they won't pick up sort of more whimsical covers. So I think in America, they've gone very masculine, edgy, dark. And obviously in the UK, they've gone more for the emotional side of things. Child on the cover.
Interesting how much I love that cover. Not that the other one's not good. It is, but that one is the one that draws me in.
There we go. So they've gone for very different sort of positioning in the marketplace. And that's where the differences kind of came in. That's where they were kind of thinking about their readers and who they were trying to target with the covers.
You've covered. Hi, Malcolm. We've got. Hello. I just had to have a look who it was from.
Hi, Malcolm.
we we cover grief in lots of aspects in this book. I won't go into too many details, but one of the ones that I wanted to focus on was Harry's grief over her career, because we find out straight away, this isn't a spoiler, she was in the police and then she wasn't. We don't find out why till much later in the book, so obviously I won't go into that. But this loss of her career and her identity, she is grieving. She's grieving at the start of the book. And that must be quite a painful thing to write, especially when you're writing a character called Elliot, who is named after your son, who was the inspiration for the book. And I don't know how you separate that. There's two questions there, really. So we're talking about Harriet's grief, but also then how you separated Book Elliot from Son Elliot when you were writing it.
I think, kind of Harriet's grief. I remember sitting down with somebody before I wrote Pendulum, and it was a guy who worked in the music industry, and he was lamenting the fact that he'd been made redundant because of the changes in people not buying CDs anymore and going to digital downloads. And he just started crying. And he was someone I just met in a green room while we were getting ready for a TV interview. So it wasn't great timing for
No, maybe not.
him to be having this very emotional experience. But people really do define themselves by their occupation, by their vocation, by their job, and it's such a huge part of who we are. And I think particularly if you're in the police force, the army, fire brigade, anything where there's a group of tight-knit people who are doing something out of the ordinary, and particularly the police. I was talking to somebody a few days ago, and I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And she kind of took a step back and she said, "What are your political leanings?" I said, "Well,
There's a loaded question.
That's a loaded question." And she said, "I work for the LAPD."
Okay.
And I said, "Oh, that's, you're a police officer then." And she said, "Yeah, but some people hate the police." And so where you're working in a profession where you're, considered with low regard by certain elements of society, it very much then drives you into a all-consuming identity. And so you're right, she is grieving, she's bereft at the beginning of this book. And that's what propels her forward. It's kind of part desperation to get that life back, but also partly because it's all she knows. She knows how to solve crimes. She knows how to, follow leads and pick up evidence. And then in terms of writing Book Elliot and Son Elliot, it was actually really useful because I could picture myself in those moments. And then you can
but that's kind of brutal.
It is, but you draw on, I think, let's put it this way. When I wrote Pendulum, a lot of the things that are in there, you kind of project yourself into how would that feel? What would that be like to, for those things to happen to you? I think authors do it all the time. You're kind of drawing on your own life and putting yourself in those situations. And I think it's really easy if you're thinking about, children being abducted, like, a lot of thrillers center on that, or, people being murdered or whatever. It's really easy if you picture people close to you, that it helps you get into, kind of in touch with those deep emotions. And that's what makes the experience really compelling for the reader. If I write it like an insurance manual, it's probably not going to give you the same reaction.
No, but also I suppose if you're sat sobbing as you're typing, then that's really going to come across to the reader as well. If you're distraught typing it, I don't know how.
There are parts of the book that I still choke up at now. I wrote it. I know what's going to happen, and just every time I read it, I'm like, when the mum. No, I'm not going to go any further.
Nope. No, you are
when
not.
When someone does something and says something about a something, it just gets me every time.
The funny thing is, I can feel it now as you're saying it. And Laura's just written, spooky/freaky, just had an alert that someone has commented on one of her pigeonhole comments about the book on the topic of grief, just as I asked a question about grief.
No.
I mean, the book isn't just about grief. There is a lot of grief. There is a lot of heart. There's a lot of family. I mean, I'm literally rolling through what can I actually bring up about the themes, and you really can't unless somebody's read it. If everybody watching had read this book, this would be a completely different conversation. It has been suggested to us by Leslie, and I've suggested it before that as well, that maybe we should have some sort of group reading, where we all choose a book and then only people who've read it watch. But we decided it being impossible to choose from all the authors that we have.
Yeah. No, I think we would be having a different conversation. But I mean, like I said, this is a chronicle of someone's life. So you are going to get family in it. You're going to get love, grief. You obviously have the mystery. But I think it actually, I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the host broke down twice. And this is the first time it's ever happened to me. While he was interviewing me, he just started choking up.
Well, I'm really glad we can't talk about it, because I would be a blubbering wreck, and it'd be, how did you?
But he said to me, he said, this book's changed the way I view the rest of my life. He said, it's changed the way I look at the years I have left and how I'm going to use them. I was like, okay, I can sort of see that, but it's more where you are in your life. And you've taken that from this book because of where you are. And that's why I was saying, you're going to get out of this what you need for where you are in your life. And people who don't really need very much are not going to get, they're not going to see as much. They'll get a mystery and an adventure and whatever else. But there are people who I had a message from an author who said, I really needed this book because you've been going through something in life. And grief's in here, but I think it gives you a different perspective on how to look at grief. You kind of think about things a bit differently.
I made a note of inferior scoundrel. So inferior scoundrel is a great way of describing all those missteps before you meet the one. So I was talking to the kids about what I was going to be asking you tonight over tea, and they were kind of half listening, as they do. I'm excited, and they're like, "Oh, she's African," but I said inferior scoundrel, and that got some chuckles. I think that is a great way of politely saying what we'd maybe say in a different way sometimes.
Yeah, we would. Yeah. I mean, and again, I think the book's quite gentle and tried to be artful in the use of language and in the book, and look for interesting ways to express things that we could say much more colourfully.
We could definitely say it more colourfully. I keep going back to Harry and this desire that she has for justice and the truth at whatever the cost is. And there are other aspects of at all cost in different parts of the book, but I just think she's fantastic, and I'm really hoping that we can convince you to write more of them, or I can write to agents, publishers.
You can do. They love to hear from people who want more of characters, but I mean, I won't rule it out. I really enjoyed writing her, and we'll see what happens. I've got, I've just sent in the process of sort of finalizing what I hope is going to be my next book, and got various other things sort of in the pipeline. So
does it get less nerve-wracking?
It's always nerve-wracking because you're always hoping that people are going to like it and respond to it and see the things that you see in it. You kind of, I don't think that ever goes away, but it's less kind of mission critical. So I write with James Patterson as well. So we write the private series together, and I'm just finishing my bit on the fourth book together, and he wants to do another book together. And so that kind of the screenwriting work I do, it means that I know I'm going to always be writing, or certainly for the next couple of years. So it takes the pressure off. But I think you always want people to like what you've written. That's why you're writing it. So you're hoping people are going to read it and enjoy it and share it and talk about it and whatever. So, and that starts with your editor. You're hoping your editor is going to respond to it.
Tony said, has to go. Great interview, great book, genuinely unique. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Tony. Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask Mill's question before I move on to the next one. She's always confused by authors who don't have books in the background on chats. What's on your bookshelves? Is that just because if you had to sit in a certain place to be away from the family?
Yeah. So, well, no, it's not all that. It's the way the house is laid out. In order to get good lighting, I have to be in a certain place. Otherwise, I have to start moving furniture. So I have shelves which I can show.
Oh,
You might actually be able. So yeah, you can just
go.
see them in the background. They're behind. Yeah.
Oh, the brown shelves.
Yeah, the brown shelves, and they're sort of
I was
packed
going
full
to
of books.
point, but obviously if I point, I'm pointing at my own
Doesn't make
screen
any
and
difference.
nobody's
Yeah,
going to
so
see it.
hold on, I can't. There we are. So
There we
there,
are.
I'm wiggling at the shelves. We don't have as many books as we used to. We used to have hundreds and hundreds of books, but obviously we've moved here, so the books are currently stored in my. Actually, I better not say. They're in a secure vault somewhere. No, they're in my mum's cubby storage above her garage. And we've probably got dozens of books now, which we've acquired here or that are being shipped over from Goldsboro Books. I've gone all out of focus.
You have a little bit, but
Yeah,
only a bit.
it's a soft focus for, to mask my lines.
I have a bright light that blasts me. I got a new phone because my camera on my old phone, my daughter, my eldest, said, "Mum, it looks like you're taking a photo through a potato." We've got a new camera, and the camera is so good. I hate it. I hate it. You can see everything. So that's interesting.
I mean, that is the thing with sort of, contemporary TV and film. You can see everything. It's all super focused. But in the old days, they used to rub Vaseline on the lens to, give people that soft focus look to help
Right,
actors
Vaseline
look younger.
list
Yeah.
for tomorrow. So let's go back. We briefly touched on the different elements of media you've used in the book. So we had court transcripts, we had poetry. There's a short story. There's less. I mean, a short story within a book. I mean, that's a great idea. I loved that. That was really surprising. How did you decide what was good? Was it just part of the process of writing? Did you come up with it as you went along, or did you have a very firm idea of what you would use beforehand?
Like I said, I did a first version of this, which was pretty much completely told from Harry's perspective, and it was really procedural. You kind of followed the detective through the mystery, and I wanted something different from this. And Anthony Horowitz said, it's not magical realism, but it is taking you on a magical experience, if you like. It's like, and that's what I think all of these different elements give you. And I tried, whenever I would come to a part of the story, I would say, well, what's the most interesting way to tell this? And there's a bit where one of the characters, you get an insight into their counseling notes. And I just thought that's really an interesting way to do this, because you're completely uninhibited if you're writing your notes for counseling, because it's supposed to be confidential and private, and you'll just say exactly how you feel. And I just thought that's a really powerful way of delivering that kind of emotional experience. And so that was kind of, it was one of my overriding questions, was what's the most interesting way for the reader? And that's something I've learned from James Patterson. It's reader first. Just think about the reader. Don't try and show how clever you are as an author. Don't use flowery language because you want to show your smarts. Don't show all your research. Just give the reader the best reading experience you can. And that's and so I would always think, well, what would I want to read? What if I was picking this book up? What would I want to read here? And that was the defining question that helped me pick out how to approach it.
Well, it works really well. It does. It gets your interest in different ways all the way through, which I thought was brilliant. Leslie says, it sounds very unusual. She's mostly moved away from procedurals. It's not really procedural, Leslie. There are elements of it, but that isn't it. That's a bit more kind of, I don't want to say background because that makes it sound not important, but there are elements of it, but that isn't the book.
Yeah.
Would you say
It's,
that's a fair way to describe it?
I think so. Yeah. It's kind of the hook that gets you into the story.
Yeah.
And then you go into places that are completely different. Yeah.
That may be the understatement of the year. So one of the questions the book asks, or you ask in the book, is there a measure of success in life? Now, people will all have a different answer for this, but there are some profound questions asked in this book. And as you say, you can kind of take it or leave it. You can kind of go with it if that's what you're feeling, but you can just kind of skate past it if it's a bit deep for you at the moment. But it's all in there. And I'm not asking you if there is an answer to that, because everybody is going to have a different answer. And all of your characters have a different answer, and maybe the answer at the start of the book might be different to the end of the book. It is one of those books that changes and challenges you.
Yeah,
I don't even really know where I'm going with this. I'm just really going back over it in my head. I remember so much of it after having read it a few weeks ago. So and I have obviously glanced over it again today, and like I said at the beginning of the interview, gone through my questions that I'd written down as I read the book and gone, nope, can't ask that. So you must have had so many different thoughts about it as you were writing it.
Yeah, I mean, I have, and it is, again, sort of all those big questions, because you are looking at it through, the book begins with a preface from David Asher, and you are looking through all of these perspectives. They're all gone through, sort of testing ordeals one way or another. And I think when you have those moments in life, it does make you quite philosophical. You kind of think about the big questions we all kind of have pondered at some point. And so it felt natural to put them into this book. But I didn't want to, no one's interested in my answers. I don't care. It's like, it's not about me. And that's
You
what I
would
was
be
saying.
surprised how many people would be interested in your answer. But I'm not asking because I don't think that would be a fair thing, because I could ask you that now. I could ask you that in 5 years and get a completely different answer.
Yeah, different answer.
I could have asked you 20 years ago and got a different answer.
Exactly. But that's the point of this. That's why I said you're going to get out of it what you want from it. You'll, as you said, you can skate over all these things, or you can think about them. And actually, the important thing is not me saying to you, this is how you should feel. This is how, this is what I think about things. It's not. It's giving you the space. It's what I said at the beginning. You have the space in this book to put yourself into a different world, to think about things, to consider things differently. It's like a lens. You're being handed a different perspective, lots of different perspectives on life and on the world and sort of thing. And you can use that as you wish. Some people just don't want it and put it down and aren't that bothered, and other people could really go to town. And so I get a kind of a range of responses from people. Mainly people say what you said, it kind of changes I've had a lot of people say, well, this has changed me.
It changes and challenges.
Yeah, that's been a kind of consistent thing. And that is really encouraging for me to hear as an author, because it's rare that it's rare that you get books that do that kind of leave that imprint on you. And it's left an imprint on me as an author, and it's something that gets talked about in the book. That a writer will leave their imprint in my book, but a book will leave its mark on the writer as well. And I think this book has changed the way that I look at what writing is.
How about the things that you've learned as a writer throughout the years, and the things that you've then learned from the other authors that you've worked with? We're basically asking you for tips. What have you learned that would help any authors watching?
So any authors watching, I mean, I could go on about this. I love the craft of writing. I love thinking about it. I mean, I am an absolute nerd about creativity, to the extent where I've studied kind of neurological processes, scientific papers on how, because they do a lot of studies on where creativity comes from, how you make decisions, and all that kind of stuff. I've looked to the nth degree to try and understand how you can optimize your brain to be creative. So that's the kind of level of, I could talk about this for hours, but if you want some quick tips, because we don't have hours.
No, we've got
Do
about
as much.
6 minutes.
All right, so 6 minutes. Okay, this is good. So massive. Okay, let's go quick. Do as much prep work as you can up front. Think about your ideas. People often complain about writing synopses. Write synopses. Learn how to write them, because a good synopsis generally means you've got a good book. If you are a person who kind of dives into writing a book and you get 60,000 words in and you run out of steam, you don't know where it's going to end, you kind of, characters aren't working, you've got to make big changes, that's a hell of an undertaking. You've done a lot of work.
Yeah.
You've got even more work to do at that point to fix it. You've made life even more difficult. It'd be like trying to climb a mountain, doing it without scouting out any of the routes and just going up in a single go with no equipment and no gear and not knowing what you need and all that kind of stuff. You made your life really difficult. So I would say do as much prep work as you can, condense your idea down because it's easiest and most powerful at its purest form, and then build out. I always say do a log line, then a page, then 2 pages, 5 pages, 20 pages. 20 pages, you've got your kind of chapter plan, character notes, and everything. Then start writing the book. And apart from that, live an interesting life. Go and talk to people. The whole framing of this book came because I went up to a stranger and talked to them in the woods. That doesn't sound, it's not as dodgy as that sounds. I was teaching at Arvon and I went for a walk during a break and there was a man walking a dog and we just walked beside each other. And I said, "Oh, that's a lovely dog." And he said, "Oh, it's my daughter's. She died last week." And we talked for about 20 minutes.
And he got a lovely acknowledgement at the very end of your acknowledgements.
Yeah, because that crystallized for me the perspective that was missing from this book. And we had this really profound conversation, and it would never have happened. I would not have had that kind of moment of revelation if I hadn't just started talking to a stranger. So live an interesting life, talk to people, learn from other people's experiences, and start being a scavenger. Scavenge experiences, scavenge things, and you do that by pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. I don't like talking to strangers normally.
I do not have that problem. People can't escape me. I won't sit and I'm not the weirdo on the bus, not intentionally, but I've had no problem this weekend at the event that I went to. No problem just wandering up and saying hello to people, introducing other people to each other, barreling across the field at another blogger, Stu Cummins, who I've only spoken to on Twitter before now. And, it's just been, it opens so many avenues up, so many things that you wouldn't have considered. There is something, I've taken this question kind of from the book. And I wrote down, is there a running theme you've become aware of while writing this book? Something that appears even though you weren't necessarily aware that you were writing it?
Ooh.
So is there anything that appears in your books? Because there was, I can't think of the exact moment that I came up with the question, but it was something about there were no children in the books that the author was writing, that David Asher was writing. So is there anything like that in your books? Have you found any running themes?
So there's this kind of theme of missing children in his books, and No, I mean the only thing that I do, and it's a deliberate choice, is I always put bookshops or libraries into my books, so there will always be, a character going to a library or a bookshop. In this book, there's actually both. So there's a library trip and a bookshop. Just because for me as a kid, we couldn't afford to buy books. So I would spend, twice a week, we'd go to the library. And it was the most amazing thing for me because I'd trade in my books, get the new ones. And it was paradise, And so I'm really grateful for the work that librarians do. And they're always under pressure. And it's kind of a little way of saying thank you. And bookshops as well. Nantwich Bookshop is in this one. is where I had my first ever book launch, and they've
Wow.
supported me all the way through, and it was just a perfect setting for what needed to happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with libraries. I also, there was a book, and I can't think what it's called. It'll come to me as soon as we're off air. It'll come to me, and it was free on the front of a magazine. I wasn't interested in the magazine. I forget what it was, and I wouldn't name it if I did know. But I used to get the magazines when I was allowed a magazine, which was a real treat. I'd go for the ones with the free book on, and one of them I read over and over and over again. And it taught me a lot about growing up and having respect for yourself and for other people, and respecting that you have options. If somebody asks you to do something, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can say, well, actually, no, that's not what I'm feeling. So there's so many things, so many books have had such a profound impact on the person that I am now. And I would imagine you are exactly the same, as
Yeah.
are all readers.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and actually, when you look back in time, um, books used to be serialized in the Sunday papers. That just hardly ever happens anymore. And if it does, it's usually a political biography. But
Or a
you
true
used to get,
crime is the other
yeah,
one that we see a lot.
true crime. But it used to be you'd get fiction serialized in the Sunday magazines. You'd get books given away with magazines. Starbucks used to sell books in every branch. Books used to be everywhere. There were bookstores everywhere. It's sad, but it's kind of shrinking in terms of the space it occupies in our lives. And you're right. I think it affects people in a different way than television or film or video games. It's
Absolutely.
because you get to build the world, you as the reader, so it becomes part of you.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you very much. Would you like to give everybody a quick recap of where they can buy The Other Side of Night, which I'm assuming is everywhere, and what formats it comes in?
It comes in all formats. At the moment, it's hardback, ebook, and audio, and you can get it from all the usual places: indie bookshops, Waterstones, Amazon, Apple Book, everywhere. It's available everywhere. So yeah, please, if you like the sound of it, yeah, do go out and buy it. And if you want to let me know what you think, Twitter, email, through my website, Facebook. I'm on there intermittently. Instagram. Yeah, you'll find me.
Find you somewhere. Well, thank you for everybody that has come along and asked questions and commented.
Oh,
Thank you very much for coming along and talking to me, Adam. It's been an
oh.
absolute delight.
No, well, thank you for having me, Sam, and thanks to everyone for watching and engaging and asking questions. And yeah, it's been really
Go and
lovely.
buy The Other Side of Night. You will not regret it.
Oh, thank you very much, Sam.